The experiment has swapped in. I will download the bash scripts and unzip them. And you can see that there are two scripts, one to start running the workflow and the other to clean up the effects of the workflow. I'll transfer this first script to the TerLab. And I'm going to rename it to run DD IDD. And so now I'll try running it. And I know it will not run perfectly, but I just want to see what happens and at which point it stops. So the project and the experiment that I'm using, and then I'm going to give some label where my results will be stored. So I'm going to call it run D. Okay, so I provided the wrong name for the experiment. I said DDID, but I actually called my experiment DDID EX. So here we are, and we are going through the workflow. If you remember that I was installing bind on the server, and then I wanted to run some other scripts that I haven't written yet. And so I'm still installing the bind. That's going well. So the installation completed, and you can see that after we installed bind, nothing else happened. We can take a look at the logs. Logs will be in the DO directory in the folder with the label I specified, which is rund. And you can see that there are certain status files. They will tell me the status of the commands that completed. There are certain script files. From them I can see which command was run at which time, or I can actually see this from run-ddid script that I downloaded. If I scroll down, I can find these commands execute fork. So these are the commands that I will actually be executing. So I was executing apt install, I was executing bash install replay, and then I was executing bind9 restart and bash run client sh. And if you remember those two, install replay and run client, these are actually non-existing scripts right now, so they are expected to fail, whereas the other two, installing bind and restarting, I expect to succeed. And so the numbers here, 0, 1, 2, 3, are actually the numbers that correspond to my logs. So now I'm going to look at the status messages. And you can see that the first and the third succeeded. So this is the first one that I ran, apt install bind9. And the third one, which was restarting bind, they succeeded. 0 means successful running of the command. And then the second one failed, probably because I don't have that file. And we could actually double check that by looking at the error messages that are also stored in this folder. So if I look at the error message for the command that corresponds to the number 1, I can see that the error message is that I don't have that script. Okay, so now is the time that I should step back and think, is this all I need? So I can install that script, I can write that script, but did I actually set up the server? If you remember, my desire was to set up this server to be DNS root server, and so I just brought it up, but I did not set it up to be the root. So I can go back to my design, and I can change my design so that after I install bind, I actually set up the server to be the root. So after I install bind, um, I'm going to, on the server, do something like configure root. And then I'm going to wait for this to complete. So I'm going to generate this event root done. And then when that is done, I'm going to proceed and reboot the server. Okay, and I don't know what I will need to do to configure root. So for now, I can leave that empty until I discover what that will be, but I'm going to wait for it to complete. So when configure root completes is when I will proceed with the rest of the of my workflow. Okay, so now I'm actually going to go back to the TerLab and see what do I need to do to configure the root. And so in this directory that I have created earlier, many months ago, there are some guidelines how to configure the root server that exist in this file server md, and it tells me that to set up the server to act like local root, I should run bash install server with the server IP. Now, I just swapped in this experiment. I know what the server IP is now, but if I reswap it, maybe the IP will be different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say cd to this directory and then run bash install server sh. And since I don't know what the IP address will be, I will just say expip, which means the experimental IP address on that server node, on the node where this command is running. Okay, so now I can save this, and my topology didn't change, so I'm just going to re-download the bash file, unzip it again, and I'm going to transfer it again to the TerLab. Okay, and so now I'm going to go back to the TerLab and I'm going to try running this script again. And I'm just going to create another folder and I'm going to call it run root, for example. Something that makes sense to me. I could clean up after myself, but if you remember, all I did was install bind. So let's try if my script will work without cleaning up, because cleaning up would mean uninstalling bind. It's not necessary. The once I attempt to install it again, which is right now, it will go through and it will just say bind is there. Okay, so let's check what succeeded and what failed this time. So I look at the Due into my folder run root. And I look at the status messages. And the connection got a little slow, but it's 2021, so just live with it. Okay, so now we can see that things failed. My installation was successful, but everything else failed. So let's check what was wrong. First, we can take a look at the commands that we executed. So if I look at my script, I executed installation as command 0, that succeeded. And then this this particular command has failed. Okay, so if I look at why it failed, it tells me that there is no install server.sh. So let's double check that I typed the name correctly. Okay, so it should be install dash server and not install underscore server. So that was my mistake. I can go back to Due and I can fix that. And then I can re-download, unzip again. And go ahead and copy it over again. Okay, and then I'm going to try running this again. So this time I'm going to just remove that directory so I don't create million directories. And then I'm just going to try again. And as you can see, the design process and the experimentation is a long process of trial and error and then fixing things and trying again. So this is hopeful because we can see that something new has happened. So let's see what my status says now. Okay, and so I can see that 2 commands succeeded, the third one failed, and the fourth succeeded, and that's where the script stopped. And if I look at my script, I can see that this was the first one that succeeded. The second one succeeded, so I installed the root. The third one failed because I still don't have install replay, and then I was able to restart, and I never came to this 5th command because I never really installed replay, so the script would not proceed to run the client. I can actually do this in a more user-friendly manner. I can look at my Due script because the order corresponds to what is written here. So I can infer that this is my first command and the second one that succeeded, the third one failed, the fourth one succeeded, the fifth one failed. Okay, at this point, I would like to check if installation for the root was indeed successful. So the process completed, but I want to check if everything is correctly installed. So I'm going to go to my client node, and I'm going to ask the server node to tell me about google.com. And you can see that I got something back that looks like something I would get from the DNS root. It is telling me that I should ask .com, and it is giving me the addresses to ask. So at this point, I'll call it a day, and then tomorrow we will try to proceed with traffic, with client installation and running.